Hey there, hope you're doing well. So in my last video, I talked extensively about what camera you should buy and certain things that I wish I would have known before I bought my first DSLR amateur professional camera. And one of the things I really went on and on about was spend more of your money on the lenses instead of the camera body. But in that video, I didn't really explain why you should do that or give you any recommendations on a lens that you should buy. And that's what I want to do here in this video. I'm gearing this more towards somebody who is in the market for their first DSLR and is really trying to figure out which lens they need, or somebody that might be unhappy with the lens they currently own and is looking to exchange it for something that more fits what they do and what they shoot. First of all, why should you prioritize your lenses? Well, the main reason is that lenses are gonna last you a whole lot longer than a camera body. Lenses hold their value for quite a bit longer than a camera body, and so when you spend a lot of money on a lens, that lens is gonna hold that value for a much longer time than a camera body because new cameras are always coming out. They're sort of like iPhones in that every year, a couple of years, they come out with a new camera that's got a whole bunch of new features, and a lot of times it's great, but a lot of times it's just reworked old features, that kind of thing. But lenses outlast camera bodies to 3 to 4 generations. I've been shooting with some of the same lenses I bought when I first bought that Canon 6D I talked about in the last video. I've been shooting with some of the same lenses for almost 8 years now. And they still provide great images, they do great with video, they do fantastic, and that's just because lenses are able to keep up with the camera body for a long time. Generally, the rule is 2 to 3 generations of a camera is how good a lens is for, but that really is just kind of a general guideline. That's why vintage lenses are so valuable, because you can still get great results and a really interesting look and feel in your footage or in your photos from a lens that's 40, 50, 60 years old. There's an adage quote from somebody that's date the camera, marry the lens, or something sort of like that. I think it's helpful to think of the camera and the lens as two different things that do different jobs. The lens is the more artful part of the combination. It is a stylistic choice you make when you want your shot to feel a certain way. You select a certain focal length, or you focus in a certain spot so that you are drawing the viewer's eye to a certain part of your image, that kind of thing. The depth of field, all of those things are artistic and stylistic choices that you make when you are creating something. The camera body is just the machine that makes it happen, and in a lot of ways determines how easy it will be to make it happen. This is why a good photographer can use any price range of camera. It's just more difficult to make great images on an older or cheaper camera because they don't have a lot of the features, the quality of life type things that a new camera has. But the lens is really what makes or breaks your photos. So now that we have that out of the way and we've sort of divided the camera body and the lens into their respective jobs, what lens should you even buy? So I think it would help us simplify things to think of photography or videography as two different veins. Vein 1, which is going to be more posed shoots, stuff where you have total control over the environment you're shooting in. You can move the subject around, you can move the lighting around, that kind of stuff. You have the most control that you'll have versus other kinds of shoots. And then vein 2 is a non-posed shooting, where you're shooting like events, you're doing weddings or sports or travel photography, something like that, where you're sort of having to go with the flow of what's happening around you instead of being able to control directly what's happening around you. Before we talk about these separate veins and which lenses work best for them, I want to make it known that I understand there is a ton of overlap and a lot of it comes down to personal preference with these two veins, but I think dividing photography or videography up into these two different veins as a general guideline is going to be very helpful, especially for somebody who's just buying their first lens or trying to find the lens that they need, what's going to work best for them. So follow this as a general guideline. It is not a rule, and it's just my opinion. So if you're someone who shoots mostly vein 1, i.e. posed things like cars, portraits, engagement shoots, senior photos, product photos, that kind of thing, stuff, like I said, where you can control the elements of the shoot. I would highly recommend you look into a prime lens, maybe something like a 35mm f1.4. The 50mm f1.8, the nifty 50, is one of the best lenses you can buy, and every brand makes an equivalent, and they're extremely cheap, very sharp and reliable, and I can speak very highly of Canon's 50mm f1.8. It's a fantastic lens. I've shot a ton with it. Another option is an 85mm f1.4. I use the 85mm f1.4 from Sigma, and it is by far my favorite portrait and car photography lens that I own. I mean, all of my lenses do great, but that lens just, it nails it every single time, and it's the one that I go to 99% of the time for shoots like that. The reason I would suggest a prime lens for more posed things is because one of the, I guess, potential downsides of a prime lens is that it's a fixed focal length. You have to physically move yourself to adjust your framing, adjust what's included in the shot, that kind of thing. And that can be really difficult in terms of event photography or something where you don't have as much control. Prime lenses are crazy sharp, and they have the ability to go down to the really low aperture to get that super creamy bokeh and shallow depth of field in the background that everybody loves. Generally, they're also lighter, but the trade-off is you usually have to carry more of them to cover a little bit larger focal length range. So it's all a trade-off. You're buying a trade-off every time. It just depends on what works better for you. On to vein 2. If you shoot more mobile things like weddings, sporting events, you know, just events in general, travel photos, restaurant documenting for social media, that kind of thing, I would highly recommend a zoom lens of some kind. And almost with no contest, I would recommend the 24 to 70mm f2.8. Every brand has an equivalent. Every third-party brand's got an equivalent. Every main camera brand's got an equivalent. You can find a 24 to 70 almost no problem. And the reason I recommend it so highly is because it has almost a perfect focal length range. 24 is just wide enough where you can include almost everything. The whole venue for a wedding, for example, you can include the whole sanctuary in one shot to get that really wide shot, show everybody that's there, show everything that's going on. Also for travel, you can include wide landscapes, get everything in there, get that banging sunset all the way across your frame. But it also has the 70mm capability, which is really good for portraits, a little bit more tight up close. You can get some really crispy detail shots with 70mm. So 24 to 70 is an ideal focal length for being extremely versatile. You can do any kind of shooting with that lens. You can move around, you can change environments. You don't really have to worry about switching lenses because you've pretty much got all your bases covered. Now, if 24 to 70 isn't quite what you're looking for, I can also recommend a 70 to 200 or a 16 to 35mm. Both of those at f2.8 are gonna be great lenses. They're just not quite as versatile as the 24 to 70 because 70 to 200 is tight focal length getting in tighter, and 16 to 35 is a wide focal length, zooming in a little bit, but still is debatably wide. So 24 to 70 is probably your best option in terms of covering the best range, but a 70 to 200 and a 16 to 35 are both tremendously good lenses. I own both of them and I use them all the time, but I usually use them almost like you'd use a prime lens, where I put them on for a specific purpose and then change them out for something that I think is a little bit more versatile. And if you're not really quite sure what you shoot yet, what you love shooting and what you want to try and book people for or just do in general, I would highly recommend just picking up a 50mm f1.8. They're like $100. You can get the RF version for Canon for, I think it's like $180 now. So it's a stupid cheap lens, stupidly cheap, and one of the best lenses that I own. It is the most versatile prime lens I have because it's just wide enough where you can work around small spaces a little bit, and you can still get up close and personal and get great portraits, great details with that 50mm. It also goes down to f1.8, so it's got the shallow depth of field. It's a tremendous lens, and I think it's the perfect middle ground between prime lenses and zoom lenses. I know that was a lot of information, and I know that you're probably stressed out enough as it is if you're looking for your first lens, but don't be afraid. Pick one up. All you can do is try stuff out. it's all downhill from here, because the more lenses you buy, the more you're gonna figure out what you like and what you don't like, and it'll get easier, I promise. Those are my recommendations. I'm sorry I can't just say go out, buy this lens, because that's just not quite how it works. Photography, videography doesn't really work like that. A lot of it comes down to personal preference, as well as what you as a creative need on the front of your camera to do your best work. So sorry I can't just give you a one size fits all. You're gonna have to do a little bit of work on your own, but you can handle it. I know you can. Everybody that's come before you's handled it, and everybody that'll come after you's handled it. So you got this, don't worry about it. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or leave a comment. I'd love to help you if I can. If you've got any questions, just let me know. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. If you would like some more specific recommendations, please, again, let me know. I might be able to give them to you. I think that's about it. Hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed watching. I'll catch you later.